Hi, my name is Bill Parisi, and I'm the founder and owner of the Parisi Speed School. I'm proud to introduce this video series to help you achieve your goals as a coach or athlete. My team and I have spent the last 15 years studying and researching thousands of books and videos so you don't have to. My army of over 100 professionals have been instrumental in this process. The success of our program is truly a tribute to my staff and their passion to help kids improve their lives. The Parisi Speed School is your resource for cutting-edge training information.
Hello everybody, this is Martin Rooney again from the world-famous Parisi Speed School, bringing you the fourth installment in the Parisi Training System video series, the 40-yard dash method. This video is our most anticipated video in the series, and we guarantee that by the end of this, you will be exposed to many of the secrets that have helped us train the fastest athletes in the country. Now let's get started. Now you might be thinking, what gives the Parisi Speed School the right to do a video on the 40-yard dash? Well, a little history on us. In the last 4 years alone, we've had the two fastest men at the NFL Combine. We've had 5 men run 4.3 seconds or less on the laser times at the NFL Combine. And we've had the fastest man at 9 different positions in the last 4 years. In addition to this, we've had some of the fastest recorded high school times at any of the high school combines. And we've had some of the fastest track and field times in the world this year. This is due to our diligent work trying to find the best methods to get faster. And we're excited to bring those to you today. Now you might be asking yourself, why is speed important? Well, it could be easy to see that every year we have athletes in the professional ranks make tens of millions of dollars because of the times that they ran. Now that may be impressive, but that is no more important than an athlete being picked last on the playing field or sitting the bench because they're not fast enough. Well, what's exciting to know is that speed is a skill and everyone can get faster. The 40-yard dash is one of the most exciting tests to watch, or any short sprint for that matter. You've seen it before. Everybody glued to the stopwatches, seeing what kind of times everybody ran. The buzz in the crowd when somebody ran a fast time. The rush when you run a personal best in front of your coaches, or the glory of having yourself listed as a 4.4 guy in the paper. But many people argue that the 40-yard dash isn't a good test. I mean, does it really indicate how good an athlete really is? Let's face it, how many times does an athlete run 40 yards straight ahead without changing direction? Well, in sports, that's not too often. But how many times does an athlete have to accelerate or start or reach maximal speed? And that's all the time. So right now, what we're going to do is talk about all the requirements that you need to have to run a great 40-yard dash. 40-yard dash. It's 120 feet, 1,440 inches, and it decides many times who plays and who doesn't in sports across America all the time. Now, what are the things that make an athlete run a fast 40? Well, we know it involves starting strength, acceleration ability, ability to reach top speed. And all of these are related to relative body strength, power, and running technique. So in essence, does the 40-yard dash decide whether you're a great athlete or not? Well, maybe not on the field, but you're going to have many of the characteristics of a successful athlete to run a great 40. And let's face it, if a coach has a choice between a 4.3 and a 5.3, they know that they can teach that 4.3 player to play that sport, but getting that 5.3 player to run that 4.3 may be difficult. So we're going to argue that the 40-yard dash is an important test, and it's something worth your time to learn about right now. This video is going to break down the 40-yard dash into 7 specific components. We're going to demonstrate these components and then deliver our signature speed and strength training techniques that'll make you a better athlete on the field. This video is not about cheating or tricks, it's about making you a better, more knowledgeable athlete. Remember, there is no cramming in sports. At the Parisi Speed School, we often hear that knowledge is power, but that is only true if you put action behind it. Now let's get started. When most people think of the 40-yard dash, they think about running as fast as they can. And if this is the mindset that you have about the race when you bought this video, you're going to be much faster at the end of it. The 40-yard dash is not a measure of who's the fastest, but it's a measure of who runs the test the best that day. Imagine for a second that the 40-yard dash was an Olympic event. And imagine you were running the 40-yard dash at Beijing at the next Olympics. Would your training change at all? Would you try to learn every inch out of that 120 feet? Well, we're sure you would. Now today on our video, I'm proud to introduce another great Parisi athlete, Joe Mendel. Joe Mendel is a two-time All-American from the University of Connecticut in the 400 meter. This year, Joe trained and made the U.S. indoor squad and competed in Budapest, Hungary at the World Indoor Championships. Joe finished 6th in the 400 meter. He has lifetime personal bests of 4.3s in the 40-yard dash, low 10-second times in the 100 meter, and a 45.8-second time in the 400 meter. So I can't think of a better athlete that we could have today to demonstrate some of our speed techniques. And the thing I'm most proud to announce is we've been working with Joe for the last number of years, and now Joe has officially become a Parisi trainer, and we're excited to have him here on the video today. The first component of the 40-yard dash that we're going to cover today is the stance. Now when we ask most athletes what they think is the most important part of the 40, they usually say the first step or the start, but that is untrue. The stance and a proper stance sets up the first step or the start. Can you imagine for a second that Maurice Green goes to the Olympic Games and he doesn't know what foot he's going to start with or how his stance works? Although that may sound crazy, I go to combines all the time and watch athletes not knowing which foot they're going to put forward. Today we're going to cover 3 different stance techniques to make sure you have them all down pat. The first is going to be the 40-yard dash classic stance. Then we're going to go over a standing stance that you might use on the sports field. And finally, we're going to go over a baseball stance for the 60-yard dash as well. The classic 40-yard dash start is something that we have fiddled with for years here at the Parisi Speed School. We've used close stances, wide stances. We've tried everything in the book, and we've used video analysis extensively to find what works best. Before we show you our secret technique on what is the best way to run the 40, we're going to show you some improper techniques that people are using right now and why they don't work. One of the most common techniques that athletes use, or that I see athletes use that don't know much about the 40-yard dash, is they start entirely too far behind the line, which sets their muscles up not to be quick at a start. So Joe right now, what he's going to do is he's going to set up the feet a few feet behind the line and the other foot way back with the hand down on the line and the arm up. Right here, what's easy to see is if I look at Joe's hips and his back foot, he's literally almost a yard or 2 away from the starting line. So now instead of running a 40-yard dash, he's going to be running a 42-yard dash, which is something we don't want. This arm position right here too is what we call the flag. Right there, this is a flag saying, hey coach, as soon as you see that hand move, start the watch, which is what we don't want to see as well. And if I put a marble on Joe's back, which is our signature cue, if I put a marble on his back, that marble would roll straight off his back, which tells me his back and waist are in too much hip flexion, which is going to fire him up straight instead of out when he starts. That's the first one. The second improper stance, which is something I'm seeing coached a lot all over the place too, is something that people call the bunch start. And we've found that this is another start that is going to hurt times and put you in an improper technique for your first step and your first 10. The bunch start, what Joe's going to do is now he crowds the line thinking, hey, now the closer I can get to the line, now the shorter distance I'm going to run. His head is slightly in front of the line, but now he's so bunched up that his legs, the shin angle is improper. He's not going to be able to deliver any force to jump out. And again, that flexion at the hips is going to jackknife him straight up instead of out where we want to go. And again, the arm is in the wrong position. So this technique, difficult for people to use. Athletes aren't strong enough to really use this technique, and it sets you up for the wrong positions when you start. Now what we're going to do is go over the technique that we've found that works best and why it works best. What Joe's going to do now, we've found about a 4 to 6 inch distance of the front foot that you use behind the starting line. After that, we move the feet about 5 or 6 inches apart and the toe even with the heel on the back foot. What Joe is going to do then is using a solid arm, straight arm and solid hand grip, he's going to place his weight onto that front hand, still keeping weight on his feet. The shin angle is a good forward shin angle on the back leg and the front leg, and that arm is bent and locked at a 90-degree position ready to fire. The low back is arched and the chest is kept open so that if I put the marble on his back, now the marble stays in place. Because in this position, now Joe is ready to use his legs, his glutes, his quads powerfully to fire straight out on the angle that his back is at and that his legs are at. And we've still got that distance in front of the line. And Joe can stand up. This is the technique that we want to use. This is the technique that's helped us produce the fastest guys at the NFL Combine every year. The second stance that we're going to show is the standing stance. This is commonly used in football games, baseball games, or any sport where it requires acceleration from a standing position. We're going to first show some of the improper techniques that athletes use when they execute this move. The first one, and the most common one that we see, is athletes think about taking that wide stance and really leaning forward, thinking, man, I'm really going to get a jump here. But what happens is, now the legs are extended and they don't get the opportunity to use their strength well to accelerate. And that forward lean jackknifes them up again and puts them in a bad position to be fast in the first 10 yards. The correct position that we want to see. Again, Joe's going to place his front foot about 4 inches behind the line. He's going to separate his feet by about 5 or 6 inches, keeping a heel-toe relationship between the 2 feet. In that position, we can either start with what we like as our 90-degree arm angles, where the athlete is in an opposite arm, opposite leg relationship, ready to fire out and explode using the arms. Or, say from a standing stance, he can have his hands in the down position, standing up more upright. Or he can have his hands out in a position, say if he wants to jam somebody on the football field. Any of these positions are good, and we want to make sure that the weight is on the balls of the feet and that the legs are tense and ready to fire forward. The third start that we're going to show is the baseball start for the 60-yard dash. In recent years, the 60-yard dash has become as important to the baseball player as the 40-yard dash is to the football player. And again, there's an exact technique that can make your athletes the fastest on the field. What Joe's going to do again is show the improper techniques first that most athletes use when they think they're running a great 60. And commonly, again, it involves a wide stance. The athletes get in a really wide stance, hands out, and they think, okay, now in this position, I'm going to explode to the side and really start running. And they may watch their favorite player on TV and watch that athlete bringing those feet out, getting wider, and think this is the way to do it. But through video analysis, we've found that there's a much faster technique, and it involves first narrowing the stance. What Joe's going to use now is about a shoulder width apart stance, no wider than that. Now, as you saw in our change of direction video series, the athlete has an ability to move his center of gravity and change the force angles of his lower body to accelerate quickly. From there too, Joe can also keep the arms bent at a little bit of a 90-degree angle and keep the elbows back if he has to, so that then he can fire the arm in the opposite arm, opposite leg position that we're going to see a little bit when we examine the first step. Now that we've got the athlete in the proper stance and we understand the importance of the stance, the athlete is then ready to explode out for a powerful first step. The first step is the second portion of the 40-yard dash that has to be correct. There are many common mistakes that we've said already that athletes make when their stance is incorrect on the first step. Most common cues that we see that are wrong are people pop up too high, too fast, following the position of their heads, or they take too short or too long of a first step, which kills the first 10. What's really interesting and what you have to be aware of is that the first step can set the tone for the rest of the race. If you miss the first step, we've found that that can be a 3/10 swing in your time in the 40-yard dash just for that first couple of yards difference. Now what Joe's going to do right now is he's going to get down in that stance that we went over again for the 40-yard dash. He's going to have that flat back, the arm at 90 degrees, the head and chin tucked, and what he's going to do now is in that position he's going to explode out for the first step. second start that we're going to cover is the start from the standing position. This is critical because on the field, the first step that you take can be the difference between getting there or not getting there. Most sports are games of inches, and that first step is going to make the big difference in what happens in your play. Right now, Joe is going to get down there in the standing start that we talked about before. He's going to have the weight on the balls of the feet, the arms at 90 degrees, that chest and torso in a 45-degree angle. From there, what Joe's going to focus on is exploding out, keeping his center of gravity in front of his base of support, taking a long, powerful stride, and then driving back into the ground with it. The third first step that we're going to show is the baseball first step. This is another critical position that you have to get right to make a difference in your sport. When you look at baseball, people are sometimes thrown out by mere inches, and the difference can be in that first step, and we're going to show you how to use that technique right now. Pretending that that line is a base, Joe is again going to get in that narrow stance. He's going to have the hands ready to explode. Now what Joe's going to focus on is that left foot is going to explode and that hip is going to turn and then drive down into position and go. All too often, athletes make the mistake of false stepping with the right foot or not turning in time and running sideways first. Now Joe's going to show us the right technique. The third component of the race is probably one of the most important, and that's the first 10 yards of the 40-yard dash. This has become, for us, the greatest predictor of the times that our athletes are going to run in the 40. So an athlete that runs the fastest 10 has the opportunity to run the fastest 40. If you think about it, when you look at a breakaway in sports, whether it's a football player running for a touchdown or an ice hockey player breaking away for a goal, those people are rarely caught from behind, and it's because they've already accelerated away and it's going to be impossible for them to be caught. The 10-yard dash, there are a number of things that we have our athletes think about, and the first one is that, again, they have to be as strong as they can be at the body weight that they're at. If anybody just watched the Olympic Games, those athletes were lean and very strong at their body weight, and that's what gave them the ability to accelerate in the 10. And in our 10-yard dash, we're talking about building strength in the quadriceps, the anterior deltoids, the calves, and the gluteal muscles. Those are our most important muscles when we talk about acceleration. Athletes also have to remember that it's a long stride that they take in the 10-yard dash. All too often, athletes take these short little choppy strides thinking that they're fast because their turnover is fast, but they're not covering a great distance. The cue that we use with our athletes is imagine an airplane when it takes off. It doesn't just take off right into the sky. First, it has to get up to speed, and that's what we think the 10-yard dash is during our 40-yard race. Right now, Joe's going to show us a 10. He's going to get down in that perfect stance that we went over before. He's going to execute that long driving first step, and then he's going to take long, powerful strides for that first 10 and accelerate his body into the rest of the race. During the 10-yard dash, there are also a number of things that we use with our athletes to help them run their best times. The first one is that we try to make sure that the athlete tries to complete the full 10 yards in 6 strides. This is going to make sure that they take that long, powerful step and that they're driving out and pushing back into the ground. Another big thing that we have our athletes do is keep their eyes on the ground a few yards in front of them. All too often, one of the first movements that an athlete makes out of that stance is they pop up and immediately look downfield. When that happens, the torso and the rest of the body is going to follow the head, and they're actually creating backward momentum instead of driving forward. So we want to keep that torso angle forward and that center of gravity in front of the base of support. Most athletes, when they do this correctly, they describe to us, they say, wow, that was my best time. I felt like I was falling on my face right there. And that is exactly the feeling that we want you to have during that first 10. So what that tells us is, or tells your athletes is that they've got to practice it over and over and feel what a great 10 feels like, and then repeat it over and over again until it feels natural to them. Right now, Joe's going to demonstrate that long 6-stride 10-yard dash, keeping his weight forward, pushing back into the ground, and showing a little power. The fourth component of the 40-yard dash is the transition between 10 and 20 yards. This is another important component where the athlete now is making the exchange between acceleration and top-end ability. This is almost, you can look at it as the change between just pure strength and neural activation. Technique is critical here, and the most important piece that we have our athletes focus on is transitioning the head from a leaning forward position to now more of an upright one. This change in position is controlled by the eyes, now focusing away from the ground towards the distance of the finish where they're going to run to. The transition should also be a slow one. All too often, athletes bring the head back quickly, which halts momentum going forward and creates a disruption in the race. The fifth component of the 40-yard dash that we're going to cover is the distance between 20 and 40 yards. This distance exemplifies now neural activation or neural skill. In the acceleration portion of the race, relative body strength and technique were the most important. Now, turnover and technique become the most important for us. At this stage of the race, stride length and stride frequency are both increasing. So that tells us that it is all about rate of force development and the technique that the athlete uses. An important cue that we use with our athletes here is to stay relaxed. All too often at this point in the race, the athletes try to tense up and muscle their way through the rest of the race. This is only going to slow them down. Try to keep a loose jaw, stay relaxed, and let the race happen. Technical cues that we want to look at here. We want the head to be straight ahead, focused on a straight line through the race. The shoulders and upper back should be relaxed, the arms at 90 degrees with the hands open. The hand should be following a hip to chin relationship. And very important, what we've found at this stage is that that elbow's got to come forward to create an angle in front of the body. This angle right here we've found has been critical to creating the knee lift that's important for the athlete to get the optimal stride length and the amount of power back into the ground that they need. The athlete should be running on the balls of their feet and using optimal recovery mechanics where the leg is coming up, flat, driving through, and then ripping back into the ground. The athlete should be thinking about tearing into the ground and running on hot coals at this distance. Now Joe's going to show us how it's done. All right, Joe. The sixth component of the 40-yard dash is the actual finish. Now that we've made it through the entire race, the last thing we want athletes to do is add time to their score by finishing improperly. All too often it's seductive for athletes that they're running that race and then they lunge out and try to dive through the finish, jamming the foot into the ground and slowing themselves down. What we've found that works best is for an athlete to run through the finish, quickly dipping the head down right at the finish to signify the end of the race. If a coach is hand timing that race, that'll easily get him to hit that finger down faster and make sure you get the optimal time. What Joe's going to do right now is run through finish, running through the line, snapping the head down, and finishing through. The seventh component of the 40-yard dash is the deceleration component. What athletes have to make sure they remember is that the race isn't over just because they cross the finish line. They've got to make sure that they come to a proper deceleration and stop afterwards to prevent breakdown or injury. One of the biggest mistakes an athlete can make is to run that 40 maxed out and then try to come to a hammering down stop 5 yards after the finish just to get back to their coach to find out their time. What you want to make sure is that you have an ample amount of room to slow down gradually and come to a stop. If you don't have that room, some facilities use a crash mat or a crash pad, but we would recommend that you don't use that if you don't have to. So right now what Joe's going to do is accelerate through, and use proper deceleration mechanics. In the making of this video series, we have gotten tremendous feedback from a number of the coaches and athletes that have bought these tapes. And one of the biggest things that they all remark about is, what are those crazy exercises that you guys are doing in between all the clips? We want to find out more about that. Well, on this video, we're going to share some of the signature secret training techniques that we use to get our athletes faster. I am sure that not only have you not seen some of these before, but if you add these to your program, you're going to get incredible results.
The medicine ball is one of our favorite tools at the Parisi Speed School. On this video, we show the upward throw, the forward throw, and the backward throw using a 25-pound medicine ball. These exercises are fantastic for developing the starting strength that an athlete needs to explode out of the stance shown on this video. These exercises are also fantastic for developing the upper body, core, and lower body strength needed to explode out of their stance and accelerate into their first 10. Tire flips are another exercise that we added to the Parisi Speed School a number of years ago. Although many people think it's just a strongman exercise, lighter tires can be used with younger athletes to still get great results and keep kids interested in their training. The forward tire flip and push that's seen on this video is a super tool for developing starting strength and explosive upper body ability. We use the tire flips to develop the speed and strength needed to accelerate out in the 10 and for the rest of the 40. We usually use the tires with a number of different repetitions per set. So we may go 8 repetitions or 8 flips per set, 10 flips per set, rest, and do it again. In addition to the strength gains that the tire flips help you make, it is also a great cardiovascular training tool. The plate push series is probably something that many of you have never seen before. It requires not only that you have plates, but you have a great surface that has the right coefficient of friction for these exercises. The forward plate pushes are excellent tools not only for starting strength, but acceleration strength as well. If you perform these exercises, you are going to be amazed by the fatigue and blood flow that fires into your quadriceps, gluteal muscles, and hamstrings. We have found that this has been one of the awesome exercises that we use at the Parisi Speed School to develop our overall speed. The single plate push, double plate push, and sandbag plate push are excellent tools that we use to get kids faster every day at the Parisi Speed School. To mention, the sandbag plate push on this video is a 170-pound sandbag plus 90 pounds of plates that's sliding across the turf floor. You can only imagine what kind of force you're able to develop and the speed that you're going to achieve through this. The mountain climber exercise that's featured on this video is one of the most difficult exercises in terms of coordination and balance. We found that this is not only a great exercise for training the upper body and lower body, but the core has to remain stable and steady as well. This is one of our favorite exercises to start with athletes that really need to work on their stability and strength, and it really enhances their ability to come out of their stance for the 40-yard dash. The alligator exercise featured on this video is also something you've probably never seen before. It is performed by having the athlete walk on his hands while keeping his core stable and pulling 2 45-pound plates behind him. The 2 plates are held in place by keeping the ankles properly dorsiflexed as the athlete drags the plates down the track. Our squat series that we use at the Parisi Speed School is also something radically different than many coaches have seen before. The alternating quarter squat series is one of the most demanding
Sideways sled pull